going on, guys? It's Elias. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be covering something that I get asked about a lot. Now, if you guys noticed, I do a ton of track days in my Civic Type R. I've done a ton of events in the Civic Type R, so I've been able to test a lot of parts out. Now, if you've missed it, I've done a bunch of recommendation videos already on tires, wheels, suspension setups, brake setups, etc. They're very detailed and kind of long, and hopefully it helps a lot of you guys out. So go back in my videos. I'll try to link some in the description below so you guys can take a look at. But I really wanted to do a short video today and kind of explain what the best brake setup I've found to be for a kind of a motorsport application. Now, the Civic Type R is a factory car. It's not a race car, but I definitely used mine more as a race car than anything else. But I really found a really good setup from Hawk to really work out the best in terms of longevity, brake feel, and my driving style. My driving style is, as you'll see right here, drop the anchor, use that force to turn, and then floor it, right? That's kind of the front wheel drive recipe for me. That's kind of the trail braking and getting that car positioned properly. I like that setup. So let's go ahead and get into it and explain to you guys why it's so important to pick the right setup, what brakes go through in a track setup environment, and why it's so important to pick the right brakes. All right, guys, let's get started. Now, before I get into the whys of this brake pad setup, I want to point out that if you click down below in the links in the description, basically for the last, year and a half or so, maybe longer, my preferred brake setup has been there since, at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And so when you go down there, you take a look down there, you could actually go ahead and buy it if you'd like, but to not further suspense, it's the DTC 60s in the fronts and DTC 30s in the back from Hawk. So why did I choose those? Well, before we get into why I chose those specifically, let's talk about what brakes go through in a track setting. So what I'm about to show you is an extreme test set up by Volkswagen. So special thanks for Volkswagen folks to set up this video. But this is the test of the Bugatti Chirons brakes. Now it's an extreme test because it has to be able to slow down from 200 miles an hour consistently. And this testing is titanium calipers. So in this test you're going to see what a caliper and brake setup goes through. Now again, this is an extreme case and extreme testing. But it basically happens significantly on a racetrack. You go from 120 down to 50, up to 120 again, down to 50 again, and this is what you see. You see that the disc is also obviously very worn down, and it gets worn down significantly, and it gets really heated up. But the brake pads, are in there as well, are pivotal to continue this performance. Now, if the brake pads start melting and the coefficient of friction really goes down, they won't stop the car. Now this is extremely hot, as you can see. It goes really high and heats, and I don't think well, none of my cars on the track have gotten this hot on the disc temperature. You see the disc temperature right there, 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's very high. But what it shows you there is that temperatures are very important when it comes to the brake disc, the brake caliper, and the brake pad performance. Now, what you're seeing there is an extremely high temperature brake application. Now, the disc, again, is 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a crazy amount of heat. I don't think I've ever gotten a car, I've never seen a car get that high. It's not normal for a car to get that hot. So, again, it's important to understand that temperatures play a huge role in how friction material interacts with each other. And yes, brakes do get really hot under severe use. So with that knowledge, let's go ahead and take a look at a car, an onboard demonstration of a car on track and how hot those pads get. Now, this video is courtesy of VTBD Flyer on YouTube. So go ahead and check him out. He hasn't posted in a very long time, but he's driving a LS swapped Miata here. So it's a fairly heavier car than it was designed to be. So he's got a big brake kit by Willwood. And here you see kind of the stresses of the suspension, but also the stresses on the brakes. And the main thing to know about the brakes setup and applications is that you really want that confidence going to the track and not having to worry about whether the brakes are going to work or not. So obviously one of the most important companions to your brake pad setup is going to be your fluid, making sure you bleed the fluids properly, make sure you use high temp fluid. I use type 2 fluid, and I've also used, there's other fluids out there that you can buy, but again, in the description below you'll see what fluids I approve of and I've used before. But again, you want that fluid to be good, and you want your brake pads to always be ready to anchor you down. One other thing you must check frequently is making sure your discs are not cracking. One of the reasons I always recommend getting blanks instead of getting, I don't recommend getting cross-drilled or slotted rotors or discs, because they, first of all, eat up your brake pads much faster. They're basically scraping off material, and the hotter those brake pads get, the more material gets scraped off. I really don't recommend that. So the other thing is, they're more prone to cracking, especially if they're drilled, where those holes are. Cracks start to form, and discs crack, especially when you get them really, really hot, and they cool down, and you heat them up again. The heat cycles can crack steel, and that's what you see happening there. So you want to avoid cross drills, you want to avoid slotted, you want to get those blanks. So get blank discs, use regular faced blank discs for the front and back of your Type R or any track car you have. And you want to get really confidence-inducing brake pads. Now for me, I really enjoy that anchor feeling that I get from the DTC line of Hawk. So DTC stands for Dynamic Torque Control, and this is their performance brake line, their motorsport brake line for Hawk Performance. They say it everywhere in the box, on the website, not meant to be used on the streets. Unfortunately, due to regulations, things have changed, and you no longer you're supposed to be using, track-oriented brake pads on the streets. For whatever reason, I think there's copper or something, who knows. But this DTC line has different temperature ranges, and it's important to figure out which temperature ranges you're going to be playing with. Let's take a look at these different temperature ranges. Now, in my opinion, any company purporting to sell you performance brake pad components should give you their friction graph. So it's friction versus temperature. Now, you see here there's different lines, there's different things. The main two things I want to point out, so for example, the DTC 80, that red line you see there, basically doesn't work under, let's say, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll still stop, but it's not going to feel great. You need to get that thing up to 500 Fahrenheit or more in order to brake. And then once you get up there, it'll be the most responsive and most friction you'll get from a brake pad of any kind. So that's one end of the extreme. On the other end of the extreme is, you'll see here the yellow line, you'll see HP+. The HP+ is not designed to work past around 800 degrees. Now it'll still stop you, but the fall off from there will be quite significant, and you really don't want to be above 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit on HP Plus. And those are really street designed brake pads. So in here you'll see my DTC 30s that I picked for the rears. They kind of have a semi-sharp fall off, but they work immediately out of the gate, very similar to the green line, the DTC 60s. Now the reason I picked the DTC 30s in the back to be a little bit less friction than the DTC 60s in the front is I feel that balances out the brakes and allows the vehicle to really stop in a more controlled manner. So it's I've tried DTC 60s in the back, I've tried DTC 30s in the back for the Type R, and I really prefer the 30s in the way they feel. And really, you're not gonna get that much heat in the back of the Civic Type R when you're running it on the track. Now, the one caveat I have to say is that I have not tried their brand new ER1 race friction, as they call it, brake pads. They look very promising. If you look at this graph right here, they work from 100 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up through 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. I really want to try them out. They may be the next go-to brake pad for all of my track cars, but we'll see how they react to the way I drive. Like I said, I really like that anchor feeling that I get when you get the brakes on there, and it's always gave me that confident feeling of just braking as hard as possible, and it's giving it all it's got. It's never let me down, and in terms of when I need to brake really hard, it throws the anchors out. Now, whether the tires are able to stick that braking, it's a different story, but in terms of the brake pad feeling, DTCs have never let me down. I will be trying the ER1s fairly soon, so stay tuned for that. Be sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're interested in how those work. But for now, DTC 60s and DTC 30s are the way I would go. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching the video. I hope you guys learned something. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.